YouTube, Ben here. It's definitely been a while, so I do apologize for that. Life and work have been absolutely crazy, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to record some of these deck profile discussions that I've been meaning to get out for quite a while now. So now that I have a little bit of downtime, I did want to start off and try to spice things up a little bit with a new format. The boys and I in general, we are working to nail down a more regular, content schedule moving forward. As you said before, BT-15 is a very, very long format with quite a lot of downtime in between sets. So we want to keep the channel nice and fresh for you guys. We want to try to grow the channel, evolve in a way that, we can get more diverse content and more refreshing content for you all. So hopefully this is the start of something exciting for the channel moving forward. And last bit of administrative business before we hop into the video is that we do have our socials, as always, linked in the video description down below. So please do feel free to check them out. It includes our Twitter, our Instagram, our Discord, along with our TCG player affiliate and YouTube memberships. The Discord is growing. We've got a lot of folks coming in and talking about local results, deck building discussion, spoilers talk with all the leaks that we've been getting. So it's been a really great place to just sit down and talk a lot of Digi with a lot of folks. So I've had a lot of fun getting to know some members of the community as well. So please do feel free to check it out. But enough chit chat, let's hop right into the real content of this video, which is Digi Police. Alrighty guys, so Digi Police for me has been a really fun deck to test and try to crack. I think the mechanics of the deck have a lot of potential, and I can see the deck getting a lot stronger as it gets more and more support in future sets. We know that we're going to be getting, a lot of Digi Police pieces come BT-16, so I do think that there are going to be a lot of updates that we can do to this deck moving forward, and it's only going to get stronger. This is the list I've settled on for now, but please do let me know what you guys think, and if there are any other choices or ratio differences that you would make, please do let me know. I think it's a deck that is very flexible and very sort of player dependent, pilot dependent. So I think there's a lot of expressive freedom that you can see with this deck, and I would love to see what you guys have to, bring to the table, regarding your own Digi Police builds. But without further ado here, let's jump right into the eggs, which for me will be 4 of the BT-14 Missimon. I chose Missimon mainly because of the ability to recycle and not deck yourself out, which if you're leaning into the D-Brigade engine in any sort of form with this deck, you are putting yourself at risk of doing. The 2k DP boost, while it seems minimal at first, I think is actually quite important for this deck, just because you are trying to do a lot of DP climbing and also swinging into your opponent's Digimon. So being able to give yourself a 2k DP boost can actually come in clutch and swing the tide of the game in your favor. The one sacrifice that I do anticipate seeing with this deck is that Ryudomon, which is one of the core rookies for this new archetype, will cost 1 to Digivolve. So it is a little bit of a trade-off there, but I do think it's a sacrifice that I am willing to make just to make the overall game plan of the deck a little bit more smooth, a little bit more achievable. For the rookies, we will start off with BT-4 Commandramon at a 4 of. I think in the future, this guy will be replaced by the Searcher Commandramon that we will be getting in BT-16. But for now, I think this is pretty good at maintaining your board presence and for getting your bodies out on board. You do have a fair amount of Commandramon targets within this deck with, the different rookies that we're running, as well as the Hi-Commandramon that we are running as well. So you do get a fair amount of chance of hitting a Commandramon to play out with its on-deletion effect. So I think it's still pretty good. The next, we'll do 4 of the BT-14 Commandramon. It is a staple searcher, allowing you to cycle through the top 5 cards of your deck, picking up a Digi Police or D-Brigade piece. It also allows you to just map out your future draws if that's what you want to do. If you want to keep those 5 cards, you can kind of cycle your hand draws, your effect plays out and whatnot as you kind of map things out. Or you can say, look, I don't really like what I'm seeing, I'm just going to bottom deck it and give myself a better chance at seeing what I want to see moving forward. So I think it's a very, very nice searcher. The inheritable is also very nice, as you can give your stack protection from deletion or field removal by sacrificing one of your other D-Brigade pieces on the field. Do note that it is D-Brigade in trade, it doesn't count Digi Police, so just keep that in mind when you're planning for that effect to go off. To wrap up our rookies, we are going to have the new BT-15 Ryudomon at a 4 of. I think it's a pretty strong rookie here, mainly because it does allow you to find a way to cheat out your 4-cost tamer, which is Shu Yulin, for free. By doing so, you are protected from Digimon effects for the turn, which can be very clutch in this meta, and also helps your top end to stick on the board, right? That is a very key component to this deck, is trying to get your top end pieces to stick for as long as possible and using their effects to really control board presence there. The Inheritable also lines up very nicely with what Digi Police wants to do in this meta, which is interact with your opponent's board state during all turns, and synchronizes very, very well with the Ginryumon, which we'll see later on, as well as the Hisaryumon. Moving forward to the level 4s, we start with 3 Numemon from BT-14. Great for the sneaky rush play and allows you to play a Satsuki for free, essentially at the end of turn. Again, I think it may end up getting replaced come BT-16 once we get some more pieces, but for now, I think it does a really, really good job at providing great value for the deck, giving yourself a essentially rush swing with jamming, and then once it lives the turn, you can play out a Satsuki just to establish a tamer. I think it's just huge value. And then the next level 4 that we will have on board is 3 Hi-Commandramon from BT-14. Again, as stated earlier, it does count as a Commandramon, which is great synergy for BT-4 Commandramon, and its Inheritable is also pretty good for the deck as well. Wrapping up the level 4s, we do have 4 of the new Ginryumon from BT-15, having the effect to suspend both on sort of like an on-play and when digivolving, synergizes very well with the line, as well as with the top end and Oryumon. If you have a Digi Police tamer underneath the Ginryumon as a source when you're digivolving, then you can lock down that chosen Digimon until the end of your opponent's next turn, which can be very annoying and frustrating depending on what they're playing. The Inheritable is identical to what Ryudomon has to offer, which again just helps with the mantra of the deck and allows you to interact with your opponent's board state during their turn, which is something that we haven't really seen a whole lot in Digimon in general, which I think is really, really fun. Moving on to the level 5s, we will start with 4 of the Cargodramon from, I believe it's BT-14, mainly used for the on-digivolving, on-play effect, which essentially helps you with the wideboarding strategy that D-Brigade is very well known for. Being able to play up to a play cost of 4 is nice, as you are also able to play out tamers with this condition. So the Inheritable is also, again, really nice. It basically states that when one of your Digimon is deleted, to play out a Commandramon from top 3 cards. This can be a double-edged sword, I feel, though, so be wary of it, because it is nice to wideboard and get bodies out, is also not so nice when you're forced to deck yourself out if you're kind of caught in a pinch that way. So do keep that Inheritable in mind as you're stringing your plays along and as you're going into your top end, to kind of watch where you are deck size wise. You know, there have been times where I find myself running low on deck space because I have trashed so many with my search. You know, and this is not traditional D-Brigade where you can kind of recur pieces and bring trash and back into your deck. It's a little less friendly in that regard, so do keep that in mind. The next level 5 that we have is 4 of the BT-15 Hisaryumon, which was introduced to us as part of the new Digi Police line. It has blocker inherently and has a very interactive all turns effect, which reads: when an effect suspends another Digimon or Tamer, if this Digimon has a Tamer card with the Digi Police trait in its Digivolution cards, you may Digivolve this Digimon into a Digimon card with the Beast Dragon or Digi Police trait from your hand without paying the play cost. Very, very good value there, right? Allowing you to just turbo straight into your level 6 is huge, and this is an all turns effect, so it can also act as almost like a pseudo ace mechanic in a way. So if you can imagine with your Inheritables with Ryudomon and Ginryumon, then you can see this, you know, where this card can be really busted, right? You can essentially turbo into a level 6 during both your turn and your opponent's turn. You can activate its Inheritable effect, which is when something gets suspended via effect, you unsuspend, so allowing you to restand your top end, and also allowing you to suspend either opponent's Digimon, opponent's Tamers, and really messing up their combo plays. So I think it's really just a really interactive card and a really, you know, busted card to help you get into your top end, which is your win condition with most decks, right? So Suspension also counts as just essentially blocking, swinging. You can choose to suspend it via your own effects, right? So there's so many different ways that you can activate this upon suspension effect that I think it's just huge. You know, I think it's just a really, really good card to help you get into your top end. And it synergizes very, very well with Oryumon, which is what we're going to be talking about very shortly here. So, you know, let's just hop right into him, right? We'll go right into Oryumon. We're going to run this guy out of 4 of. I think it's a very interesting source of removal. The ability to bottom deck in general within the game of Digimon is a really, really strong mechanic. It's a very powerful way to remove a piece from the field almost permanently at this point. There's also Tamer interaction that's intertwined with Oryumon, as well as just the inheritables in general. So really, really strong removal option that's just built into the archetype in and of itself. And then another bonus to this is that it helps add to your wideboard philosophy, as you are able to play out a 5k DP or less Digimon when this card gets suspended. Again, whether it be via attacking, whether it be via blocking, it just allows you to string your combo plays along. If you can imagine playing out Ginryumon to suspend another body, being able to swing over said body and do a lot of shenanigans that way, really helps with the interactive kind of control aspect of this deck. The last level 6 we will be running in this deck is 2 of the BT-14 Brigadramon. I still think Brigade is a very strong top end. You have access once again to removal, wideboarding, which again can just help you win games in and of itself. Your goal is to really get him on board and just have him stick for as long as possible. At times I found him very useful as a early top end to just help establish one board presence and just keep wideboarding, so that even if you can't pull off sort of the archetypal Digi Police shenanigans, you can lean just into the D-Brigade sort of half of this archetype and just try to wideboard your opponent and chip away at their security. I might consider increasing his count to like a 3 of and maybe do like a 3-3 split of Oryumon and Brigade. But, you know, as my testing evolves, I'll keep you guys posted. But for now, I'm doing a 4-2 split with 4 Oryumon and 2 Brigade. Moving on to our Tamers, we will be running 3 of the BT-14 Satsuki Tamahime and 4 of the BT-15 Shu Yulin. Satsuki, when mind linked, will give your Digimon jamming and reboot, while Shu is both a memory tamer as well as a mind link capability to once again give Alliance and reboot, which Alliance here is absolutely scary. As we have seen in the Terriermon decks, Alliance can really wreak havoc on a lot of decks because we're seeing big monsters swing from multiple checks. Here with Hisaryumon's ability to restand your Oryumon, you're potentially swinging for 4 checks, you know, right there and then. If not, you're swinging just for, you know, big numbers to climb over your opponent's boss end and clearing that threat as well. So really, really flexible. And I think a lot of that scary aggression just comes from Alliance itself. So really, really fun mechanic to play out of, and really allows you to just interact with your opponent's board state immensely, which is where I feel the deck is really fun to play. It almost feels like a game of chess or like a game of shogi when you're really able to start seeing your pieces and just kind of control your board and control your opponent's ability to really just do anything in this scenario. You know, moving on to our options, we've got 3 defense training, which at this point trainings are just a must in almost every deck in the game. They just increase your consistency and tempo so much that there's really no reason not to run trainings in your deck anymore. And then to wrap up our options, we have 1 DG Dimension and 2 DCD Bomb. Both options for me are great. D-Digivolve right now I think is a very, very strong mechanic with a lot of level 5 and a lot of level 6 ace cards running around. Their play costs are low, so a lot of times DG will take care of them and just net you memory. Same thing with DCD Bomb. You know, shout out to Anthony for kind of pointing that out to me. You know, ace cards are low play costs, and they do fit the criteria to be popped by DG and DCD Bomb. So a lot of times these option cards can be free, you know, and they do a whole lot for just overall control. DCD Bomb I like a lot as well, as it does allow you to recycle your trash back into your deck. So that also is very helpful with just keeping you alive as well. And that wraps up the deck profile. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. But before we wrap up for good here, let's hop into a brief discussion on how I personally find myself piloting this deck and what I feel like are some of the strengths and weaknesses. Alright, so we're going to try to keep this quick, but I did want to go over some gameplay tips that I felt was, I found myself finding useful as I started testing this deck out more and learning about the deck, even further. Like I said before, this deck is really about interacting with your opponent's board state and trying to blend in that perfect mix of aggression along with control. The way I usually view this deck is that you're trying to lock down your opponent via suspension effects, as well as using that ability to turn the tide of aggression into your favor and take control of the game. So you really, almost in essence, want to starve them of their resources and just take them out of the game completely. And at that right moment, that's when you really push your own aggression and then try to go for lethal in that sense. So in terms of early game setup, what I'll usually do is I'm not too picky with my starting hand, as long as I see a resemblance of a line and, ideally a tamer if possible. That's really all I'm looking for. I'm not really looking for I'm looking for this particular card or that particular card to set things up. It's not like Hunters where you kind of want to see that turn 1 Taiki play or anything like that. It's really just, get a line going, because as soon as you can climb into your top end, that's really where your gas will come from. Second of all, you do want to establish your tamers as soon as possible. The sooner you can get these tamers out, the better you're off. Just because a lot of the sort of augmentation effects to your Digimon comes from your tamers. The ability to give jamming, alliance, reboot, a lot of those things stem from your tamers, and the deck sort of falters if you really don't see your tamers out in play. So if you can get them out as soon as possible, get an early Numemon play to establish a Satsuki, get an early Shu Yulin tucked under a Ryudomon, great. If you need to just hard play them, I think that's fine too. Turn 2, turn 3, it's perfectly fine to just slam down a tamer and say that's it. I think you really live and die off of your tamers, so the sooner you get them on board, the better you're going to be. And, like I said, the deck is, you do need to take some time to set up. So don't feel like pressure to say, hey, I've got to go fast. Some decks will make you feel that way. I totally get that. But you do want to set up. And sometimes if you push out too early or you push out too preemptively and you're missing some of your pieces, you're going to be in a very difficult situation. So I usually will say try to set up as best as possible and then, kind of establish your big stack almost in the back and then push out at the right time. Moving on to our mid-game setup, usually what I'll say is you have kind of 2 routes to go with, right? I alluded to this earlier when we talked about our top ends, but if you establish your level 6, you can either go or lean into the D-Brigade route with Brigadramon or lean more towards the Oryumon. Like I said, personally, I prefer to go into Brigade earlier if I have the option, just because this gives me both board control as well as a wide board presence to say, look, if they can't deal with it, I'm just going to keep building off of what I have, and it establishes a foundation for me. If I establish an Oryumon, then my next sort of plan of attack would be to establish a sort of a wall of just blockers that will continuously interact with our opponent's board state and utilize the inheritables that are under either my big stack or my, smaller stacks to really just lock down my opponent whenever they try to do something. And then moving into the late game, that's where you really utilize Shu Yulin's alliance to really make your swings as aggressive and effective as possible. If you have your Hisaryumon's effect on board to restand, then you're really swinging in multiple times for really big numbers, whether that be into security or into your opponent's board state. Either or, I think, is really, really good. Usually earlier on, what I'll try to do, if it's feasible, is try to just swing into my opponent's bodies and force them to just rebuild their stack. Especially nowadays, where we're seeing a lot of decks do sort of the 1 to 2 stack sort of ideology. It's very sort of devastating to see their big stack just be deleted. The only thing you really have to worry about is Melga, who does have battle protection, so you're not able to clear them as efficiently. But other decks, you can just swing right over with Alliance, which is really, really nice. Restand and swing over a second stack if they have one out on board. So I think it's just really fun to do that. And then towards the end game, when I've sort of drained my opponent of their resources or forced them to be really, really far behind, then I can utilize Alliance to say, look, I'm just going to plow through security. You know, we're big numbers, multiple checks. We're going to restand and do it again, right? And if you've whiteboarded enough, then hopefully that's enough to give you game, you know, at that point in time. And that's usually my end game strategy, which is starve my opponent. When I feel like I've starved them enough or put them back enough where I'm in a comfortable position, then I will go in, use Alliance to swing multiple checks, clear through security, and hopefully use my sort of smaller end bodies to kind of either go for lethal and finish the game right there and then. Some strengths and weaknesses to this deck. You know, I definitely think, like I said before, there are a lot of fun interactions that you can do with your opponent's board state during all turns, right? A lot of these effects have that keyword of all turns, so it really puts your opponent in a situation where they really have to consider their exit strategy or their out to what you have on board. And sometimes if they can't, they can't play the game. They're locked out of the game and they can't do a whole lot. It's, like I said, really, really interactive, really engaging deck to play. You really feel like you're sort of kind of pulling the strings on multiple levels, which is sort of a playstyle that I enjoy. In other card games that I play, like One Piece, you know, the few decks that I've dabbled in with Shadowverse, like it's a very similar mantra that the decks I'd lean towards are decks that do that, where you kind of try to manipulate both your and your opponent's board state in your favor. So I think this deck does that to a T, and it's really, really fun for me. Where I see this deck struggling, though, is that there aren't a lot of protection options for it. So as much as you want your bodies to stick, you know, outside of what the BT-15 Commandramon can provide the deck, as well as the Hi-Commandramon, there really isn't a whole lot that the new Digi Police archetype provides in terms of protection. So if they can oust your stack, you're pretty much left rebuilding from square one. It's very piece and line reliant. So if you're missing a few pieces here and there, you almost feel like you're caught in between two different archetypes. You know, you almost feel like you're kind of doing half of what D-Brigade wants to do, but you also feel like you're doing half of what Digi Police wants to do. And I feel like the deck is still sort of stuck in this like growing phase where it's transitioning, right? You know, the true pure D-Brigade is being phased out for Digi Police moving forward. And I think right now the deck is in this sort of gray zone. But I still think it's a fun deck to, you know, test out. It just sometimes will struggle in that regard. And it can be outpaced. You know, like I said, this deck will take some time to set up. So decks like Melga, Fenry, Mirage to a degree, decks that really focus on one stack and minimal tamer usage can be very tricky to play around because unfortunately you rely on your opponent putting stuff out for you to interact with. If they don't do that, you're kind of short out of luck and you can't really do what you want to do. So I think the sort of one stack OTK decks are definitely a troublesome matchup for Digi Police. But yeah, this wraps it up, guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and the new format that I'm trying to use. Hopefully you can take something out of this video as you start theory crafting Digi Police if you choose to do so. I definitely think I'm going to be testing this deck out more and more and playing around with it as the format evolves. So stay tuned for more updates if I can provide it for you guys. I personally am going to try to be as consistent as I can with doing this in terms of just other decks in general for you all. I know that a lot of folks have liked these sort of discussion pieces and have taken a lot out of it. So, you know, sorry I haven't been able to get these out the past couple months, but I'm going to try to be more regular and more consistent with this moving forward. So yeah, let me know what you guys think on my build. Let me know if there are any other kind of pointer tips you would like to point out or other things that I may have missed about the archetype that you feel like are sort of important things to stress and to, you know, let the community know about. I'm always open to these sort of discussions and I love learning from the community as well. You guys have all been awesome. It's been great to engage with you all. It's been really fun hearing what you guys are building and theory crafting, and I've learned a lot from you guys as well. So please do, you know, engage. You know, it's been really fun and I hope you guys are having just as much fun as we are. But yeah, we really appreciate all your support. One last reminder to check out the socials, hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.